Made in His image and mirroring His reflection. Black and beautiful, my shortcomings is His perfections. Addicted to this polio and method, that's why they toil you. On the clouds, I'm in crave. Homage to my people who fight to be equal.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Colorism Conversations. I'm Dr. Karen Moore, founder of I Am the Color of Beautiful Global, where we are redefining the standard of beauty for women of color. Our focus is on eradicating colorism in communities of color across the globe. And we do this through the arts and conversations such as this. I want to welcome you to our show tonight. We're going to have another really great conversation. I ask you to invite people to the conversation now. Those of you who are watching the replay, please let us know that you've watched the replay and give us some feedback. Let us know what your questions are, what your comments are. If you're here today and you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat and let us know so that we can try to answer your questions or respond to your comments. And today we have a really, really interesting conversation. And this conversation came about through a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, who I was talking to him about preference. And he said something very interesting to me. He said, well, preference is discrimination. And I thought that was, and then I went on to explain to him what I was referring to in regard to preference, but it opened up a kind of interesting thought process for me to really look at that and consider, is preference discrimination? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And so we're going to welcome my beautiful sister. Hey, beautiful.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Renee Moore, who is our public health advisor for I Am the Color of Beautiful Global. And one of the things that we talk about all the time is that colorism does fall under mental health because it can affect people's self-esteem and self-confidence, self-worth, and that also makes it fall under public health. So we always like to have public health advisors and we talk to mental health people in a lot of different instances about being able to address those particular issues when we're dealing with the community. So today is preference discrimination. Hey, boo. Robin Williams Sr. has joined us. My boo.
Hey, Rob.
Husband. We're married. He's my boo and my husband. Sometimes we say boo, and boo could mean anything. he's my boo husband. Thank you for joining us, dear. So we're going to talk about this idea of, is preference discrimination? And I've been thinking a lot about it and doing some research and some study on it. And it really is a very interesting thing to talk about and to address in this particular day and time that we are living in. And one of the things that we talk about in regard to colorism is the idea that darker skin, we call it deeply melanated. Deeply melanated skin is not as beautiful, is not intelligent, is not considered worthy. And that many times when we talk about beauty and we talk about so many other things, we talk about intelligence and we talk about other things, it's light skin that is put up as the model of what that is. So when we talk about preference, we're talking not only about colorism when we really look at it, but we are talking about a wide range of things that can really talk about what our preferences is concerned. So you want to go ahead and have some comment on that?
Yeah, so, from a public health standpoint, the people who are on the other side of who are the non-preferred, that causes them, once again, a lot of issues with self-esteem. It causes them a lot of issues with just feeling worthy and valuable and feeling visible. And so it's not, like you say, it's not only color, it's with height and weight and age and all of those things. And so the most important thing is, it's one thing if you just don't like me because we just don't gel. But it's another thing if you totally exclude me from any type of relationship with you because of the color of my skin, because I'm too light or I'm too dark.
Right.
Um,
Right. So when we talk about preference and when I put up the topic today about preference, and so when we look at it and we decide that, okay, so really, what is preference? And so the definition of preference is a greater liking for one alternative over another or others. The definition of discrimination, the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things, especially on the grounds of race, age, or sex. So when we're talking about unjust treatment or prejudicial treatment, we have to look at our preferences causing us to exclude people or to treat people unfairly or prejudicially because of our preference. And so often we talk about the fact that there are people who say, now, if we're just going to talk about relationships and dating for a moment,
okay.
there are people who say, I don't date dark skinned women. I prefer, I prefer light skinned women. I don't date dark skinned women. I prefer light skinned women. Or I only date dark skinned women. I prefer dark skinned women. I don't like light skinned women. So
Or men, both, it can go both ways.
I'm just saying, either way. So it it becomes an issue of, so you're saying you don't like light skinned women, or you're saying you don't like dark skinned women, or dark skinned men, or light skinned men. So we have to look at the what is the reasoning, what is the idea behind that that you're going to exclude an entire group of people just because of their skin tone, which is colorism.
Yes, it
You
is.
may not want to admit it, but it's colorism. To
Mhm.
say that I only date dark skinned men, I don't date light skinned men, or I only date light skinned men, I don't date dark skinned men, I don't like dark skinned men. And the thing that I shared in this conversation that I had is that many times I've heard it from men more so than I've heard it from women. I've heard from men, whether they be dark skinned or light skinned, they don't date dark skinned women because they don't want dark skinned babies. I've
So,
heard men say this.
right,
So you're excluding, so that's colorism, because you've decided that dark skinned women are going to give you dark skinned babies. And so you don't want dark skinned women and you don't want dark skinned babies. That's colorism. Whether you can say your preference, it's just a preference. That's more than just a preference.
right. So there's a whole thing of nature versus nurture. So in nature, there are certain things that are just going to visually appeal to you because of the way you see the world. But in nurture, the way you visibly see the world is impacted by a lot of different things. The society that you grow up in, the environment you grow up in, the neighborhood you grow up in, the people you grow up around. So when you're saying, I prefer this, I don't want that, you have to look at why that is.
Mm-hmm.
And is it because everything that has been presented to you since you came out of the womb as beautiful is a light skinned woman? All the most beautiful woman in the world is the European standard. Everything that's been presented to you about Black women or dark or deeply melanated women is that they're less intelligent, they're ghetto, they're angry, they're emasculating. So you grow up with this idea that every time you see that, it's very interesting how children learn, because they learn not only from the media, they learn from their families. If you grew up in a family where colorism was a big thing, you learn from your classmates when you go to school and they're teasing your dark skinned classmates and giving preference to your light skinned classmates.
Mm-hmm.
This is all shaping how you see the world, and you see what's beautiful, you see what's desirable.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say, I prefer light skinned women, I don't date dark skinned women, it's colorism, because you're in many instances subconsciously
Mm-hmm.
attributing characteristic to somebody that have been impressed upon you from an outside source, and you've never even taken the time to really speak to and get to know. You need to really question yourself and say, why do I not see that person as worthy of a relationship?
Right. Right. And so one of the examples that I give as far as what people would call preference. Now, I call it I call it a certain attraction. Okay. Now I'm married. My husband's watching, but I'm giving this as just an example, boo. So, um, I happen to be very attracted to deeply melanated men. That is who Idris Elba, Morris Chestnut, Blair Underwood, that's who I am attracted to. That's who really is very, very, very attractive to me. Now, however, that does not mean that I don't think Shamar Moore is fine or as Kojo's fine. I even think Lenny Kravitz is fine. Okay. Now, so just because I'm not saying I won't, because I'm drawn to deeply melanated men, does not mean that I exclude light skinned men. Because if somebody said to me, now you have a choice to go to lunch with Idris Elba or Shamar Moore, I'm going to be like, okay, I need a few minutes. Can I go to lunch with Shamar and dinner with Idris? You know what I'm saying? I need a few minutes.
Can I have breakfast with Kojo?
Hey, hello. Hello. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm not excluding just because my deep attraction is for deeply melanated men. I don't exclude light skinned men from that whole idea, that whole category of what's appealing and what's fine and what is just God's beautiful creation. Okay. So, I think that, I don't call it so much anymore, because I never think I referred to it as a preference. I don't think I ever referred to it as preference. I just say that I just really, really love deeply melanated men, but it does not mean that I don't love light skinned men either. That I just exclude them from that equation of being beautiful, because they're God's beautiful creations. He
Hey,
gave us some real beautiful stuff to look at. Okay, so
in a wide range of colors.
in a wide range of colors, give him glory. So,
Hey,
okay, give him glory.
hey.
So when we start talking about, these preferences, and we have to be really mindful that we are not excluding a group of people because they don't fit into our preference. And I was listening to a show. This was for quite a few months back, and I don't even remember the guy's name. I intentionally forgot his name because I was so disgusted. But he has this show, and women call into the show, and this woman was talking to him about how she was trying to find a man, who she was looking for a particular kind of man, and she was trying to find this man. And so he asked her what size she wore. So
What?
my first thing is,
What difference does that make?
so she said she was a 10. So he says to her, well, why aren't you a 6? If you want a certain kind of man, you got to be smaller.
What?
That's what he said to her. So I was like, that's, mind you, this is a whole nother conversation, but that, again, so we're talking about, so if your preference is for size 6, so you don't date anybody. And the thing that I think so many people miss out on is your soulmate, the person who really is designed for you, who is going to be the match for your life, may not look like your preference.
And so we were talking about this before we came on, that there's quite a few stories of someone who has that friend that they would not be dating
Right.
because they don't meet their list. They're
Mhm.
too dark, or they're too light, they're too this or they're too that, but they're a great friend.
Mhm.
And you totally exclude that person, and
Mhm.
you go out with all the people that meet your qualifications on your list, and they break your heart and abuse you and leave you, and you run back to your friend, and and your friend's there supporting you and there for you and all that, and then you go find somebody else, and then one day you wake up. You know what? Everything that I've been looking for, it's not in the package I was expecting. It's in that friend who I took the time to get to know, who was supportive of me, who cared about me,
Mhm.
who valued me,
Mhm.
who thought I was worthy, who listened to me. It just didn't come in the package you want. And that's the problem. So many of God's blessings don't come the way we expect them to come. And we miss
You
out
better say it.
on so much in life
You
because we
better say
say,
it.
God, I want this, and this is what I want, and this is how I want it to come. And when it doesn't come the way we expect it to come, we miss a blessing.
Yes. Yes. So we have to really be mindful of how our preferences are affecting our lives, and are these preferences spilling over into other aspects? Because when we start talking about discrimination, and a lot of discrimination is about preference.
Mhm.
I prefer to have white people in my company. I don't want black people in my company. Or I prefer to have black people in my company. I don't want any white people in my company. I prefer to work with men. I don't want to work with women. I don't like working with women. So I prefer to have men. I
Or
prefer to work with men, or I prefer to work with women. I don't want to work with men. So you get into all of these whole preferences that turn into a that it's a slippery slope
Mhm.
into that whole idea of is this preference now becoming discriminatory? And are we excluding, again, are we excluding people because they are not our preference?
I think that's where it becomes discriminatory, where you,
Mhm.
like you said in the beginning, if you say, I'm really attracted to this, but that doesn't mean I'm going to exclude that.
Right.
If someone comes into my life or into my sphere, and I take the time to get to know them, and they have all the qualities that I'm looking for, then it doesn't matter to me that they're not what I thought. Because a lot of times too, once you get to know a person, they become more attractive to you. They become more, saying, so you may not
Yeah.
necessarily, I mean, and think that this person is really your what you are really really attracted to, until you get to know them. And when you exclude people, you miss out on so much in life, from just experiencing their viewpoint on life, from understanding, multiple, you can learn something from everybody.
That's right. That's
You know,
right. And when we begin to treat people with kindness and consideration and civility, we can experience so many different things from different people. And like you said, we could find that person that may not be our physical preference turns out to be someone who can be very special to us and very special in our lives. And one of the things that we also realize is that a lot of attraction is first based on the physical,
there you go.
and we tend to
Put too much weight on that.
put way too much weight on physical attractiveness,
Hmm.
or what we determine is attractive, because hey, everybody has, people have different ideas of what beauty is or what attractive is anyway. The same people that I think are attractive, you may not necessarily think they are. So, but what we have to be mindful of is, okay, this person may not be what I think is attractive, but see, we're all fearfully and wonderfully made.
Amen.
And God has made all of us in our own unique way.
Hmm.
And if we begin to see people the way God sees them,
Mm.
and it's not based on the outside package that he chose for any of us, and we stop questioning why God made us the way he made us.
That's true.
Because what was so amazing to me, I was looking at um when People Magazine does the sexiest man of the year or whatever it is.
Hmm.
And it was amazing to me how most of those men said they didn't think they were sexy.
It's true.
They're like, because who was, I think it was Bradley Cooper that said, he was like, I just really can't believe they picked me. See, like, I am so not the sexiest man. He said, I am really so not the sexiest man. I'm just not.
But a lot of that too is we don't really see them in their raw state.
No.
When we see them and we've determined that they're so sexy, it's with the makeup and the lighting and the hair and the clothes and the atmosphere and the movies and the TV and the glamour and the lights. We don't see them when they first wake up in the morning.
And see, the other thing is, you see all that. You see all that on the outside. But and it's a little bit different with celebrities, I think, because how do I want to put this? Well, let me say it this way: that somebody that you see that is attractive, that you think is attractive, but the moment you begin to interact with them and you find out they're really nasty
And they,
and they really have no kind of real personality or consideration or anything like that, that whole beauty thing just kind of diminishes.
yeah,
I think celebrities, it can be a little different, because sometimes I think with celebrities, I don't want to say we. There are some fans who don't understand that celebrities aren't always on.
mm,
Okay. There are some times, when they might be out with their family, and they really don't want to be bothered with signing autographs or taking pictures with you.
or
Okay. They're out with their family. And so, some people will say, well, they're really not very nice in person, or they're really not. But sometimes, and mind you, though, on the other side of that, many people think that because you're a celebrity, you should always be ready and willing to do that. I don't necessarily agree with that,
mm,
because I think that you deserve to have a certain amount of privacy, especially when you're out with your family. Now, if I'm out as a celebrity and I'm at a celebrity event, that's different.
right,
But if I'm in a restaurant, though I don't know how many celebrities just go to regular restaurants, but even if they go to the more upscale restaurants, there's still fans there.
right,
They're this upscale fans, right? So, it's not all about, so many people say, oh, well, they're really nasty when you meet them. Well, under what circumstances you meet them?
yeah. And so it's really about getting to know a person individually. And you know, one of the articles we were reading, I think it was by Dr. Webb. It was an interesting point she made because she said when people say they won't date outside their race, we call them racist. But when people say they don't date light skinned or dark skinned people within their race, we're just like, oh, okay, that's just a preference you have. You know, so
It's colorism,
it's colorism, and colorism is
the daughter of racism.
So, you know, it's so important to get to know the person and to really concentrate on that and not to, because nobody wants to consider themselves racist or prejudiced or exclusionary. But sometimes we do need to take, because I mean, this whole conversation made me take a look at some of it, you know, why do I prefer this over that? And how many people have I maybe missed out on knowing because I may have said, you know, you're too this or you're too that or you're not this or you're not that.
Right.
You know,
I prefer 6 feet tall. You're only 5'6", so
you're out. You know, and I can say that I think that I've been very blessed. That you know, the other thing too is a comfort level. You know, we are comfortable with things that are familiar and things that are that we've been exposed to before. So, you know, you really need to make sure that you're getting out there and exposing yourself in not only work settings, but in social settings to people of all different colors, all different backgrounds. Because it's not only, you know, like it's just because it's not only within your I think it's very hard as Black people to be somewhere and not know anybody who's light skinned or dark skinned. I think that, you know, we probably see that throughout. But do you take the time to socialize with them? Do you intentionally put up barriers because you say, I prefer not to date you. So I'm going to intentionally put up some kind of barrier so I don't even really develop that kind of relationship with you. But you're missing out on, and once again, from a public health standpoint, you know, a lot of deeply melanated Black women understand that oftentimes they're considered the less desirable. So that is stressful. And actually, it's stressful to light skinned women to be considered. It's not nearly as stressful because, I mean, but you know, you're putting on people a persona that they have no, that they may not want to own.
Right.
You know, you're putting on the persona of of a deeply melanated woman that, you know, you're bitter, you're angry, you're this, you're that. And you're putting on the persona of a light skinned woman, you're intelligent, you're, you know, you're pretty, you're this and that. And, you know, I can honestly say that I have been in situations where it's been me and one other person. That person was deeply melanated, and I thought that person was far more beautiful than me. I think you're more beautiful than me.
Oh, don't start with that.
But I mean, I'm saying, just, you know, so don't put on me the persona that I think that I'm, you know, that I'm beautiful. Don't put on to me your perception of me. Allow me to show you who I really am. And that's where the true beauty lies.
That's right. That's right. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're having a conversation with African American filmmakers. Join the African American Women in Cinema Filmmaker Series at the Clubhouse, presented by I Am the Color of Beautiful Global, every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. AAWIC on Clubhouse. Join us on the Clubhouse app for this inspiring conversation. Hosted by Karen Moore, founder of I Am the Color of Beautiful Global. This Monday, April 26, 2021, AAWIC on Clubhouse, we'll be talking to filmmaker Terrence Gordon. Terrence is the CEO and co-owner of TNG Films and co-owner of Black Ink Pictures. He is director of the documentary feature film What's in a Name? A Versace Story. Join us this Monday at 6 p.m. on the Clubhouse app for African American Women in Cinema's Filmmaker Series. Okay, so we are back. So you said that you've had to look at some of, the things that you talked about as being preferences. You had to kind of take a second look at
Mhm.
those particular preferences and what they mean. So do you feel like sharing one of them?
Wow. Nothing like putting me on the spot, Karen. My God. Um,
Well, I'll share while you're thinking, I'll share mine.
okay.
So I have found through my particular experience and through my life that I have had more I don't know if difficulty is the right word. I've had more challenges dealing with women than I have dealing with men. So in any particular, many times in particular, when I was in the workplace, I really prefer to work with men because I found a lot of challenges working with women, and it just seemed that men were much easier to work with. I didn't have to go through so much of the crap that that it seemed like I had to go through with women. Um, and I think about a lot of times. I think about the piece that you wrote for Poetic Blues, A Sister Story, Success Blues,
Mhm.
and it became very, until I really started doing this work with the color of beautiful, did I begin to more so understand where some of the attitudes, where some of the anger, where some of the challenges came from.
Mhm.
Because many times as women, we a lot of times we wear those challenges, we wear our challenges. Sometimes, and we do both. We wear them and we mask them.
Mhm.
And sometimes when we've spent so much time masking them, there's a lot of bitterness and resentment that comes with having to mask those challenges.
Mhm.
And so lots of times, we tend to take it out on each other.
Sure.
And I've learned so much from the searching and the doing the different things that I do for I Am the Color of Beautiful Global, and for looking at colorism, and particularly colorism as it refers to women of color. It's given me a lot more understanding of how we as women of color in particularly relate to one another, and even how we as women across many different racial spectrums, how we interact with each other.
Mhm.
And some things are basic to being women, and some things are go deeper and are based on cultural our racial or cultural connection.
Mhm.
So for a very long time, anytime I would have to work with women, I was just like, I really would prefer to be working with men. Now, mind you, there is the and it's kind of a catch 22, because lots of times there are issues that you have working with men too, as a woman,
It's true.
depending upon the the how I want to say it, depending upon the nature of the business.
Hmm.
Like, I was working in somewhat in IT, and women in IT, you don't get a whole lot of respect from men.
Mm.
At least not when I was. Things may have changed. That was a while back. So, sometimes it was difficult being a woman in IT. And, at one point I was just, can I just work alone? Okay. Can I just work alone by myself, and I don't have to deal with men or women of any kind of culture, any kind of color. I just want to work alone.
Mm.
But there's always challenges that come with working with other people. And so when we start talking about, even preferences in who we want to work with, we have to be mindful that, first of all, not all women are the same.
It's true.
Not all Black women are the same.
It's true.
Not all men are the same. Not all Black men or Asian women or whatever it is are all the same. Not all white women are all the same. Not all white men are all the same. So we have to decide that we are going to connect with people and engage with people on that very personal human level,
Mm.
and understand about civility and where everybody's coming in when you have all these different experiences and all these different cultures and all these different things coming together. There can be a lot of beauty in that. There can also be a lot of challenges in that. And are we willing to exercise civility and begin to get to know each other and know what our challenges are, and not dismiss people based on what preferences are, or based on not knowing what their experience is.
Right. So for me, I think it's more recognizing the power of words, um, which we have to be really careful with because we
Mhm.
have to understand how they might offend people. Um, and I consider I've been very fortunate. I have worked with people of all different races, all different nationalities, all different um, religions, all different, you know, sexual preferences. So I've met and worked with and been in spaces with people from all different walks of life.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that it's made me more I wouldn't say that I've ever consciously said, I may have consciously said I prefer to work with men. But um, I don't know that I've ever consciously felt or said that I prefer not to work with someone because of their race or their color or their creed or their gender, um, or anything like that. But I think I just have to really recognize the power of the words because it may not be how I'm feeling, but when you say it, you have to realize how it's perceived by people. That it won't
Right.
be perceived as you're saying. When you say I prefer, make sure that it's understood that it's not a preference that excludes you.
Mhm.
So I think that it's really um, making me very conscious of trying to understand the reasoning behind why I prefer something.
Mhm.
And then when I'm expressing that, making sure that it's not an exclusionary or discriminatory, that they understand it's not coming from an exclusionary or discriminatory place.
Right. Right. I remember one time. Oh, and we have someone who said, Facebook user, we don't know your name unless you give Restream permission for us to see your name. But this person said, I completely understand. Sometimes it is difficult working with people. Mindfulness is of the essence. Yes, it is. And I particularly um, I remember one time I was working with this. white young lady who was dating a black man, and something happened between the two of them, and she felt that she needed to talk to me about it. I guess because I don't know if it was because I was a black woman or just I was a woman. I don't know, but she was crying and all the rest of this stuff. And I don't think I said it to her, but I was thinking, that's what you're crying about, girl. You need to live my life. We cry about. Got more to cry about than your little problem with your man. I don't think I said that. At least I hope I didn't say that to her. I don't think I said that to her. But, you know, many times too, we have to, when we operate from a place of civility and compassion,
Mhm.
we can try to understand. Because even when I was working for, I was working for Apple, and I was doing iOS support, and this girl called crying about something with her phone. And I wanted to say to her, sweetheart, there are children who are hungry in this country, and you crying about your phone?
So you got to be compassionate.
But I had to be, one of the things that Apple was big on was empathy. So I had to try to muster up some empathy about her crying about her phone.
but,
And I'm like,
but that
are
goes
you
to almost
serious right now?
that goes to almost validating the what she considers important.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. And even though it may not be important to us, if somebody is talking to us about something, we do have to find the empathy and the civility and the desire to try to be supportive. And even though it's something that we don't think people should be crying about, that we still have to show empathy and support. And then when we're talking about, one of the things that I think too is important, especially if you are fairly close to someone and they start talking about preferences, questioning, okay, so why is that your preference? I think we need to begin to question people on, okay, so you say that, you prefer somebody who's a size 6, you don't want somebody who's a size 16. Why is that? Why is that? What is the reasoning behind that? And to help people begin to look at what they're saying are their preferences, and to begin to help people to see that they may be discriminating.
and not only that, but to help them try to understand where that came from.
Exactly.
You know,
Questions.
did it really come from did it come from a place within, or did it come from your lifetime of being told that anybody over a size 8 isn't attractive? Because and I don't know that it's changed much on TV now because I don't really watch a whole lot of TV, but all the love interests are tiny. All
Say
the
it again.
all love interests on
Mm.
television are small. The only way you get to see a plus size model is mostly in plus size magazines.
There
So
have been some shows. I mean, I don't, which I'm getting ready to start really figuring out why I'm so drawn to all these police shows. I think there's something going on with that. But I primarily watch police shows, and most of the police shows, there aren't too many heavier women running around as police officers on television. Um,
but even
and but there are shows that have made heavier women love interest. This Is Us.
I've never seen that. So my question to you then becomes: Is are they a love interest, and are they presented as being um, sexy and desirable, or are they in a marriage already and they're the love interest of the marriage?
No,
I don't
I
know.
don't really watch the show, and I say that because I've seen the commercials
Okay.
where the heavier woman was the love interest. This guy was, they I don't think they were married.
Okay.
Now, Mike and Molly, I haven't watched that show either. I know that Molly was a heavier woman. But again, I don't really watch those shows, so I'm not sure how they portrayed on. I know when I used to, back in the day watched Grey's Anatomy, um, the black doctor was heavier, and she had a husband, and they kind of, I think they had like a, I think that they, if I can remember correctly, they did kind of show her and him in a love relationship,
Right.
if I
So,
can remember. But
so,
again, that's going way back. I haven't
so
watched Grey's Anatomy in years.
right. So, but most of it, I can't say all of it because I don't, like I said, I don't watch it, and there may be those exceptions. But I'm not trying to necessarily talk about the marriage relationship as much as the single woman who's being pursued and being seen as gorgeous and who's being seen as, you
Yeah,
know.
I don't know.
So,
I
lost
don't
my
know.
point there when we went off to, I don't remember what I was saying, but um,
We were talking about heavier women, and mm, we both lost it.
yeah, okay, well,
We lost it, but it's cool. That's what happens when you start getting older.
speak for
Um,
yourself. Speak for yourself. So I think my point was is that you have to really look at what that was it. You have to really look at why a size 16 is not attractive to you. Is it because it has not been presented as being attractive to you from a media standpoint? Or is it your friends that say things that are
mm,
inappropriate? So therefore you feel that that's not attractive, or you don't want to be seen as the one that, is with the big girl. So you have to really look at
or the big guy.
with a big guy. So you have to really peel back the layers and really understand why it is that you're making that choice.
Hmm.
And is it really based on um, what's the basis for that?
Exactly, and like you were saying, we have to also look at that when we start looking at colorism and looking at, is it, does it come from our family? Why we don't find the deeply melanated woman or the deeply melanated man attractive. I remember reading recently how Tyrese grew up feeling hating the way he looked,
Mm,
and that, you know, he he really felt that he was ugly and he was treated differently because of his dark skin,
mm,
and the effect that it had on him growing up. Now, Tyrese, I was really surprised to hear that because I've only known him, and I never really listened to his music so much.
mhm.
Um, I didn't watch what's the I think he was the Fast and Furious
Oh, possibly.
chain of movies.
Mhm,
But then he was on that movie Baby Boy or whatever. I never saw that either. Um, but it seems that as he came into his own and as he progressed in Hollywood, he became a sex symbol.
mhm.
He became the, Tyrese, and, when he sings and, he's on stage and all that kind of stuff, women love him,
Yeah,
but he didn't grow up like that.
right.
He said he grew up under a very, um, he grew up really difficult as regard to the way he looked, and he was teased,
Mhm,
and he never saw himself as being a good-looking guy or desirable or anything like that.
right. And then that just brings up another point too. It's not only in television, but it's in the music.
Mhm,
Especially a lot of this rap music about
mhm.
what when you look at the videos, the music videos, once again, those beautiful women are, um, you know, the lighter skinned women. We talked about the casting call for, you know,
Straight
um,
Outta Compton.
Straight Outta Compton. So there's
Mhm.
all these things that are constantly bombarding our minds and trying to give us an idea of what's beautiful. And so when we stop to think about why we don't want this and we don't want that,
Right.
what it where did that come from?
Right.
Yeah.
And for some of us, if we look at it, it has come down through generations
Okay.
in our families.
Mhm.
And the whole idea of, you'd be prettier if you were light skinned, and some of these other things that are said to children, or the light skinned girls in the family being treated different because they were light skinned.
They
They
were
were being
told.
ostracized
They were
because
told.
they were light skinned.
Yeah.
And so, we look at all these things and we're exposed to all of these different experiences. And so, like you say, they will shape our preferences based on for so many of us, what our experience has been in
Mhm.
our lifetime, and what we've been told, what has been communicated to us is, this is beautiful, this is not beautiful.
Yeah.
And when you grow up with that mindset and you carry that into adulthood, some of that can be very, very difficult to change.
Yeah.
Your whole mindset has to be changed, and you have to be exposed to and introduced to a whole different way of thinking and seeing people.
Right. Yeah. And
So in that, I want to really urge parents, as you are bringing up your children, to help them not only see their own beauty, but see the beauty in other children as well.
right. Yeah. And that's so important too about sitting down and watching certain things with your children to make sure that you can, counteract some of the information they're being fed, knowing what kind of music they're listening to, knowing what kind of friends they're around, exposing them to as many different people as they possibly can be exposed to.
Hmm.
When you grow up in a very closed society, you just miss a lot of opportunities for being accepting of things that aren't the same as you.
Right.
So you have to make sure that your kids are being exposed as much as possible to a variety of things. And it's a slippery slope. But once again, if its preference is okay, as long as it's not exclusionary, as long as you're saying I don't want that at all. you know I
Right. And even when we say preference, we still have to be mindful that that whole idea of preference, how are we
Mhm.
communicating that? How are we
How do we arrive there?
right? And even when you say preference, are you still open to
Mhm.
communicating with, working with, getting to know all people?
Right.
Are you really open? Are you really staying open to? Because, and it was something I thought about as we get ready to wind up. I remember that previously in my, even in my voting, I know there's a couple years I went into the voting booth, everybody that was black, I was checking everybody that was black. I'm like, oh, we're going to give all the black people a chance. And they might not necessarily have been the best candidate.
It's true.
But I was like, okay, everybody black. I vote for everybody that's black. I was in my zone then. Everybody that's black. We're gonna give some black people a chance. Um, and like I said, they may not necessarily, just because they were black, have been the best candidate.
Sure. But
So we have to be careful when we start talking about our preferences, and whether or not we are really opening ourselves up to finding ourselves using discriminatory practices because we have what we're calling a preference.
right. Yeah. And it's true, and that does extend to so many different things. Because if you look at it historically, if you look at the I believe it's the Senate, those blacks that have managed to make it to the Senate, or I think it's the Senate, the majority of them are light skinned, and it's been shown that light skinned candidates have a better chance of getting an office than a dark skinned candidate. Why is
Right.
that? So we have to stop with this superficial thing because, I thank God that he don't look on the outside. Okay.
I know that's right.
Thank you, Jesus. He don't care what you look like on the outside. He's interested, and that's the way we need to be.
Right. And like I always say, God is the master creator. And
Yes,
as a master creator, he doesn't create or paint in just one color.
that's it.
He he's masterful in his creation, and everybody is different.
Yes.
There's no two people who have the exact same DNA. I don't even think twins do, right? Do
Uh,
twins don't have the exact same DNA, do
it
they?
depends on whether they're identical or fraternal.
Okay, but even if they're identical, they have the exact same DNA?
I believe they do.
Okay, but they're still different, right? In some kind of way,
Some
there's
kind of
still a
way
difference with the identical twins.
it may be hard to find, but there are some kind of way.
Sometimes you have one that's introvert and one that's extrovert, right? Or you got one, I don't know. But even, you know, God made us each in our own unique ways, and we need to value that within ourselves, value that for yourself, and value that for the other people that you come in contact with. So, do you have any closing remarks?
No, I think it's been a great conversation. I think, like I say, like you just said, we basically have to really stop and just get to know people before we exclude them from our circle. And if
Absolutely.
if you're going to say I don't want to spend time with that person, make it for something other than the way they look,
Right,
or their religion, or their height, or their whatever. Just make it because we our spirits don't mesh.
right,
Okay,
right.
that's one thing. But you took the time to take that, regardless of what I look like on the outside. You took the time to dig deep and find out,
Exactly.
and you in the process you experience something that you may never have experienced.
Right,
Because if you
right.
don't take that time, you miss a blessing.
I'm telling you, that's right. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So that was an incredible conversation about is preference discrimination. And I encourage you to really look at what you're calling preferences and to make sure that they aren't leading to discriminatory practices in regard to racism, colorism, sexism, all the rest of the isms, that your preferences are not taking you down that slippery slope to discrimination. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please join us tomorrow. You saw the commercial. I'll be on Clubhouse at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow for the African American Women in Cinema's filmmaking series presented by I Am the Color of Beautiful Global. Please join us on Clubhouse tomorrow at 6 p.m. at AAWIC. That's AAWIC on Clubhouse tomorrow. We'll be back next Sunday for another episode of Colorism Conversations. You guys have an amazing, amazing day. And remember, we say it loud, we wear it proud. I am the color of beautiful. Be blessed.